Oh, crap. So yeah, that doesn't work. Hey everyone, just got done installing the Mountain Pass Performance coilover kit. Got my car nice and low, looks great, except for the wheel fitment. The wheel fitment is not so great. I need the wheels and tires out just a little bit more. And normally the most challenging part of doing that is just trying to figure out exactly how much more you want to bring it out. 15, 20, 25 millimeters, whatever. But if you have wheels that don't allow the OEM studs enough room to stick out because of its design, you've got a whole other set of issues. In this video, I'm going to show you how to fix those issues with the only two ways that I know how. So at first, I decided to cut the studs down to length in the back, and then when I moved to the front, I decided to change the OEM studs out for extended ones. So the first thing I'm going to do in this video is give you a quick summary of all of the issues that I had. Then I'm going to show you how to actually cut your wheel studs and how to replace your OEM wheel studs with the extended studs and go into more detail on those issues that I had. I'm also going to give you tons of tips and tricks based on what I learned to make this much easier for you. As far as which method is better, probably replacing your OEM studs with extended studs is better overall. And just like trying to figure out which method is quicker, these really depend on your skill sets. I will have links below to all kinds of tools and things that I use to do this. Then I'm going to show you before and after, what my cars look like before wheel studs and after. I did a video before on my previous Model 3, Tesla Model 3, and the car just looks so much better with wheel spacers. And this is not just for Teslas. This is any car that needs wheel spacers. All right, let's get going. Oh, come on. Okay, so the ARP studs that they say are supposed to work, it's too big. This knurling here is actually different than the knurling. This is the OE stud. But also it's too big. Measuring it, I think it's about 0.2 millimeters bigger. The shoulder's too big. Here, the knurling's too big. The nut is actually sticking up too far. That is weird. Let me see what's going on here. So yeah, here is one of them, and I'm assuming they're all around 16 millimeters. And then this one, 16.4. You always got to have that one nut that's just a little bit bigger. No one tells you why. The next problem, I can't believe this. This notch is needed. I can't get this stud in because it's hitting the hub here. And yet another issue. Some of these studs, these Dorman studs, have issues with their threads. It's binding up here. It's 2 out of 7 already. Here you can see. Maybe you can see that on there. There's like a nick. So what is going on here? A big pain in the butt. That's what's going on here. Let me explain. So Model 3 Performance got these same wheels and tires on my previous car, only those were 8.5 inch wide. These are 19 by 9.5 inch wide. And for some reason on this design, they are not allowing enough room in here for the lug nuts that are built onto the spacers to fit. Really, really frustrating. So I can't just easily put a spacer on these things, which I really want to do because you could see they need some spacing. And let me show you what's going on and why it takes a lot more work to put spacers on this car for these wheels. All right, so these are the spacers that I would like to use. I have already taken out the lugs that come with them. These are like extension lugs. If you don't know anything about these, this is a 20 millimeter. I don't know if 20 millimeters is going to work exactly the way I want it to, but anyway, aside from all of that, these normally come with the lugs in here, additional lugs, because when you put this on your car, the factory lugs, let's pretend this is the factory lugs, they wouldn't come out far enough. They would only come out to about here, and that doesn't give you enough bite on your actual wheel and lug nut to hold it on properly. You know, you really need to get this distance here has to equal the diameter at least of the lug nut, it turns out, which is something like 8 or 9 threads or turns. Either way, the factory lugs stick out a little bit. You put the lug nuts they give you on here to hold this onto your OEM setup, and there's a little bit, you can see these lugs are going to stand out a little bit here. These would be the OEM lugs. Then these additional lugs here is what you would use to put your wheel on, and it gives you, you know, it's like an extended lug. So I have this is the part that I'm having an issue with these current wheels. I can't fit the wheel on there. So I have a couple different choices then to fix that. I could either cut my factory lugs down. If you don't want to cut your factory lugs down, is to get extended lugs. So I've taken the lugs out of here, obviously, because I won't be using those. And what I will be doing then is putting these on my car. So this will replace my OEM studs with these extended studs, so that these will then come all the way through here and protrude enough so that I can get that wheel on there and get enough threads where I can just spin the wheels on there, no problem. So yeah, it's a big pain in the butt. You know, first off, you have to either get wheel spacers that don't have lugs in them, which I guess you could do. So that means you got to like take these lugs out of here. Done that already. But the bigger pain in the butt now is on the car. I have to go around to all 4 wheels, have to take off the rotors, and then take the factory studs out and replace them with these extended ones. These can be pounded out of here if you want to do it that way. I did invest like a whole $160 or so in one of these from Harbor Freight, 12-ton shop press, and I use that to press these lugs out really easily. And I'm going to have a different use for this also on top of this. So that's why I decided to get one of these. So this should show it pretty clearly. These are the lug nuts that you put the wheel on, and you know, you put the actual wheel lug nuts onto. And then these hopefully would have enough room with the wheel, you know, with the pattern to remain like this. But the pattern here, this wheel, doesn't have it. Not enough room. You know, and these are the OEM lugs here. We either extend these, put new lugs in there, or we chop these off pretty much right above that nut, and then, you know, always use these. So that would mean that some kind of a spacer with the lug nut built into the spacer, pressed into the spacer, would always have to be used on this car until, unless somebody wanted to replace the factory OEM cut lugs or studs. Okay, so still not there. Look at this. This is critical to make sure that this is flat. You're going to have big problems if the wheel doesn't lay completely flat across here. You know, that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. All right, we're good. Yeah, as long as we are below the surface of this nut here and we haven't like shaven it down like really bad, we're all good. All right, so trying a couple different methods so far. I put this tape here, but as soon as you start running the cutting wheel over it, you know, it gets a little warm. The tape kind of moves a little bit. Not the best way, but it could maybe give you a decent start. I've also, you know, kind of been marking the threads around there too. Then using a ruler here, you know, just making sure we're under 20 millimeters. But, you know, really the best way is put this guy down, get your straight edge and run it back and forth. And if you feel any little bump here at all, you got to take it down. You do not want this going past the surface. All right, I recommend getting a file and just kind of filing around the edges here. You can make some pretty sharp edges. And, you know, I thought it was going to be real easy to mess these threads up to make the nuts here harder to start, but honestly, they all still work perfectly fine. But, you know, some of the edges could be really sharp, so it's a good idea to run a file or something around the edges just to kind of smooth them off. I would not recommend using this to go around the edges just because it cuts so quickly and it's going to cut too much. So while I've got this big grinder, you don't need to use a big grinder. You could use a Dremel tool. Whenever I've cut things with the Dremel tool, though, it does cut real nice, but as soon as you move off a little bit, the wheel grabs and it kind of breaks the wheel. It's just a little bit more difficult to do with a Dremel. Also, you know, you could just get an old-fashioned hacksaw and do this too. That is going to be the most amount of work, but hey, you know, it'll work. So now, double, triple check. You don't feel anything protruding or grabbing on your straight edge here. What's going on? Did I not tighten it all the way? The nut is actually sticking up too far. That is weird. So yeah, here is one of them, and I'm assuming they're all around 16 millimeters. And then this one, 16.4. You always got to have that one nut that's just a little bit bigger. No one tells you why. All right, knocked a bit off of that nut, and we are finally good to go. With spacers, I torque these bolts down exactly the same as I would torque down the bolts for the wheel and tire. So Tesla is 129, 130 foot-pounds. That's what I'm torquing these to also. Ah, much better. All right, rock solid on the wheel, all tightened down, no clearance problems. Looking at this though, what I feel like I really want to do is paint those silver lugs. So there's a couple of reasons why. First off, it just doesn't look as good. You know, I don't want silver anything showing. I'd rather not even have these wheel spacers to begin with, but everything's black, all right? So I don't want chrome silver stuff there. And the other thing that I have a little bit of a worry about is, you know, these studs, I'm just kind of assuming they have a coating on them. I'm not sure. I mean, these aren't like titanium, and cutting into them, cutting through that coating, I don't know if it messes that up or not. Anyway, yeah, anything to make this project last a little longer. All right, so I decided to change the studs in the front instead of cutting them. Why? Because it's just so easy to take the rotor off, the caliper, and then this dust shield has to come off too. So obviously, take the wheel and tire off. The rotor comes off. There's a 10 millimeter bolt if you still have that here. I did not. That kind of holds the rotor on. You don't need it. Take that off. Caliper. Well, there's a brake line here. 10 millimeter bolt. Caliper comes off with these two, E18, two bolts. Hold that on. It's in view back here and here, and you can set that down. You got to be careful. You don't want to chip the finish here. Then we've got this dust shield. It's got a few of these Torx T30s, and can only use this on one of them. Luckily, they're not tight, and your car's probably new, so nothing's like stuck on there. So I happen to have one of these and was able to use it here, you know, like this, and here and here. So those come off. So then this has to come off because with it here, you couldn't back any of these out. And even moving it around, you gotta like move this to put this spot here so you could pop these guys out. Now, these come out surprisingly easy. Watch this, mini Thor sludge here. Not bad. I didn't have to hit it that hard. Then I'm going to get all of these off, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to put the extended studs in here. Now, this is going to be quicker overall than cutting the studs. However, it's more expensive. You know, like I told you, those pack of those studs were like 50 bucks each. So whatever. Oh, come on. Okay, so the ARP studs that they say are supposed to work, I've seen these in a number of places. This actual part number, this stud, it's too big. And there's actually a couple different things wrong with it. This knurling here is actually different than the knurling. This is the OE stud. There's less of them here. Okay, that's an issue. Okay, so it's not going to go in. It's not going to press in nicely at all. But also, it's too big. Measuring it, I think it's about 0.2 millimeters bigger. The shoulder's too big here. The knurling's too big. I would either have to drill this out, or I don't know how hard it would be to press in. I was going to use a lug, you know, with some washers to pull it through. I don't think I could do that if it's that big. I don't understand this. I don't know why these don't work. I don't know why they're too big, because again, I've read in a few places that they've used these before. Other people have used these and they sell these just for this. I don't know. Is it Model 3 performance that's just a little bit different? That would seem really, really weird that all of a sudden Tesla would change the stud size for this. So now I am either going to cut these, or I don't know, buy some different longer. Dorman sells also some studs here. I like these better, but maybe I'll go with Dorman. All right, guys, back with Dorman studs now. Same extended length. You know, they don't have as big of a bullet end on here. This knurling, the diameter here is very much closer to the same size as this one. Very close to the same number of knurls on there, but it might be a little bit off. All right, guys. The next problem, I can't believe this, just is like anything gonna just like work? No, nothing is gonna work. So I got to use a Dorman studs. However, I knew this was benefiting me here, this notch that they put on the head there, but I didn't really realize like how much. I didn't really think about it, honestly. But it turns out it's really, really needed. This notch is needed. I can't get this stud in because it's hitting the hub here and it puts it at a bad angle. I just need a little bit more. I need that notch cut out in order to get these in. There's nowhere else all the way around here. This is the area where you have the most room, and it's still not enough. Again, it's because these studs here are longer. You know, I wanted to use replacement extension studs here so I wouldn't have to do any cutting. And now I have to do cutting. I've got to cut these. I got to cut a notch out of it like these. Man, get the grinder out. And yet another issue. Some of these studs, these Dorman studs, have issues with their threads. So this one's not like here. It's binding up here in that spot. And some are perfectly fine. Some have just a little bit of whatever in there that once you run a lug through it's fine. But I've got, God, is this 2 out of 7 already? Here you can see, maybe you can see that on there. There's like a nick, like it's been dinged or something. One of the threads, just like one, and it's unusable. I'm calling it unusable. It's not good. I'm not going to deal with it. So these are less expensive than the ARPs, but man, I wish these ARPs worked, because none of the threads on any of them that I got have any issue at all. They are just super clean. Everything about these ARPs are just nicer. So far, like I said, about 2 out of 7 of these are bad. I won't use. Now, it just goes on and on with the issues here. All right, here is another tip to hold these while I'm grinding them down. I am using the rotor. I've obviously got a lug nut there, and then one under there. holds it really nice. Notched it out and it works. So now we just got to pull it through. Well, also though, now I don't like the fact that we've got we've got some bare metal here. So I got to coat this with something. It's probably going to spray paint it. I've got some brake caliper paint. Man, it just like never ends. All right, so far this is working out. I put the lug in and tried to kind of line it up with the splines, the knurls, but again, I'm not sure the knurls are exactly the same number on this as the OEMs. And I've got 2 washers in there, and this is actually an old OEM lug nut that I decided to use. And what I did here to keep the hub from spinning is I just kind of tap this in, the OEM lug, and catches on there to keep it from spinning. And since I already kind of messed up the threads on this, I really don't care about it anymore. Probably some other way to keep this from spinning that might be better. And when we get to this lug, I'll have to use probably some kind of pry bar on the studs that are in, just to keep everything from spinning. But go to 140. I think I'm going to use 3 washers because I think I was running into the end of the stud there, or the bottom of the stud, I should say. So yeah, looks pretty good. Decided to use this instead. Using that other stud kind of was denting up these threads here. Again, it's probably not that big of a deal, but this just kind of feels better. So what I did on the last stud is get this big breaker bar and prop it in there so that I could torque down on this guy. You know, it does help a lot to do most of the work with some kind of an impact. The last little bit though, I always did with my torque wrench just to make sure I wasn't going nuts, and I had this set to 140. 140 seemed to bring everything where it should be. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to use some kind of a torque wrench just to know how much torque you're using to pull everything in, so that you know where you're at, right? If you're torquing these to 120, it's not bottoming them out, then you know, you start torquing your lugs, your wheels and tires to 130, it might start pulling the stud in a little bit, and then it's going to decrease your overall torque. So anyway, after putting these on, I am going to make sure that I do check lug nut torque when I get the wheel and tire on, you know, whatever, a day or 2 after driving. But here they are, they're on. I just got to get everything back together. But yeah, man, this is like turning into this massive project. All right, car is all dirty, and yeah, these little blue things, I'm still measuring stuff. Don't worry about that. Wanted to show this. All right, this is pre-spacer, okay? See that? This gap, that's bad. All right, awful, just does not look good. Okay, now check this out. Spacers, we got spacers, 20 mil. Check that out. Oh man, oh, that looks so much better. Look at that. Yeah, wow. Oh my God. I mean, this is just weak. This just screams weakness. Am I right? Look at that. 20 mils might be perfect.